Alrighty, welcome back to the Millennial Thermon YouTube page and online community. I'm really excited today for y'all to hear from Carla Avalos, who is a couples therapist located in California. She's gonna share a little bit more about just relationship stuff and couple stuff in this postpartum season.
Hi, Joanna. Thanks so much for having me. So nice to connect with you. I'm Carla Avalos, a licensed clinical social worker living in Los Angeles, licensed in California, but also in Florida and Utah. And I'm trained in the Gottman method of couples therapy. Basically, what that means, it's research-based couples therapy training where I teach couples like how to better communicate, how to increase more emotional intimacy, navigate all the life transitions that can happen within a couple, like having a baby or other things that going on in the relationship. And just really reminding them that they are a team and that it's important to feed into the relationship as much as possible.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, as someone who's 11 months postpartum now, I definitely see how much my relationship with my husband has changed, and just like going through the conversations and the transition is so important, because it can get a little feisty sometimes, right? It's like we don't feel like it's fair, or like, why am I doing this and you're doing that? So that's normal. From what I hear and experience. So how specifically do you support couples? Like, what do you do? How did you get there?
Yeah, so I've always been one who like thrives in like relationship stuff, like ever since like I was a little kid. I knew that I eventually wanted to be like a couples therapist, but it wasn't until I started my prior practice in 2021, part-time, that I really started to kind of like dive into like, okay, let me get the training that I need so that I could be better equipped to like help these couples like thrive. So I started with the Gottman Method level 1 in 2021, did level 2 in 2022, and then this year I did level 3. So basically there's 3 levels for Gottman method, which is kind of really focuses on doing like these interventions like with couples about, in a way, helping them get comfortable with the uncomfortable conversations. So what I mean by that is that one of the common things that I see with couples, especially like new parents, is that there's usually one parent who feels like they are doing too much, but maybe they struggle with leaning into that vulnerability piece, as far as like, well, I could talk to them about how I'm feeling or how I need help, but I don't want to be a burden. So then it adds up to like the mental load, right? Because the mental load with like a new mom also comes up, right? So what I teach them is like, okay, like I know that, let's take a moment to like honor what you feel. Like it sounds like you're overwhelmed, but at the same time, it's okay to be vulnerable and lean into your partner, because our partners are not mind readers. They're not going to know that you're struggling. They're not going to know they're overwhelmed unless you actually tell them. So how about practicing leaning in and letting them like, hey, like, I really need some help with cooking the dinner like this week. Are you up for that? Can you help me out? Or like, hey, I'm feeling kind of like stressed out because like I just cleaned the bathroom and there was things all over. Like, would you mind be more mindful about picking up stuff? So I teach couples about how it's so important to not only lean into vulnerability, but also be very respectful and very kind when you're bringing up these things. Like, sure, we're humans. Sometimes when we're annoyed, like sometimes it just comes out how it's supposed to come out. But it's so important at the core, like how you start the conversation is a huge predictor of how it's going to end up. What I see in couples a lot is that if they started with like a lot of negativity, of course it's going to end in negative because the partner's going to get defensive, they're going to get critical. So it's so important, as much as like you're honoring like your feelings and difficult emotions, really need into being more respectful and kind. So that's one of like the key things that I like teaching like many parents that I work with.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I definitely relate to that. I feel like postpartum, becoming a new season, felt like I was like in a turtle shell, and then like all of a sudden I didn't have that shell, and I was like squishy and vulnerable, and it's like I don't know how to ask for help. I don't like conflict, but I know that I need it, and like you do feel really squishy. But in an ideal scenario, this season, it sounds like it can help grow and strengthen your relationship if you're able to get vulnerable, ask for what you need, and it'll set you up for long-term success, right? Instead of waiting till your kids are teenagers and you're just like, all right, I'm gonna explode. So I love that. I love that. So what are some of the main reasons that you say new parents might seek your help, and like how do you support them? I know you shared a little bit.
Yeah. So mainly it's because obviously being a parent is absolutely hard. Like even if you're like a first time parent or it's your second or third child, like I talk about how like, being a parent is one of those very few roles that you have in your life that stays with you forever,
Mhm.
right? Like your kids are gonna need you when they're 18, when they're 45.
Mhm.
So it's one of those transitions as far as like also like trying to process the fact that okay, you're raising a little human with like someone that you deeply love, and how are you going to navigate that together, knowing that you probably both have like your own maybe different perspectives how you want to do the things. So navigating like parenthood and also like navigating like household responsibility, because especially as a new parent, I know it could be really hard to come up with like a schedule or like who's gonna do what. But what I encourage like new parents to do is like it doesn't have to be like a set schedule, but at least create like some sort of dedicated time or have that conversation about who's gonna do what. So that way, again, it goes back to the mental load. So that way the mental load doesn't fall on, it's usually the mom who
Yeah.
experiences like the mental load. So it's so important to at least have something in place. The other reason why couples seek me for therapy is again about the difficulty about having the hard conversations, especially when they become new parents. They share that, like, oh, well, I've tried to talk to her or I've tried to talk to him before, but it goes nowhere. But then when I dive into like, okay, tell me more about like how that looks like. And what I see is that oftentimes when they do bring up like an issue of concern, it's not really in the most kind or respectful way. So of course the partner is going to become defensive or critical. So I really like teaching them like, okay, like I know that our partners can annoy sometimes, that's normal, that's human, but it's so important that when you bring up something you come from a place of kindness and respect, because you have to remember this is your life partner, you chose
Mhm.
them for like a reason, and you have to come from a place of like love and respect, because you're also modeling these healthy behaviors like for your little ones too, to see like okay, like conflict is inevitable, but I think if we talk to them with a kind of respectful way, it will go like a long way.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot. I think you touched on so many important parts. And I do think that like in the culture that we live in, I learned about something called intensive mothering, right? Like we're in a
Mm-hmm.
current cultural shift where there is a lot of expectations of sleep training, feeding,
Mm-hmm.
attachment, no trauma, gentle parenting, positive parenting, right? Like all these things. And then what ends up happening is that a lot of the stuff, not in every household, but a lot of it does end up on the mom's plate because
Mm-hmm.
at a young age we are more socialized to be taking care of the baby dolls and all of this, and then our partners are like, all right, how do I produce and how do I provide and how do I protect, right? But it's a different mental load.
Yes.
So helping make it visible, I'm like, actually I am kind of dealing with like all of this. It looks different for them, but like you said, not bringing like you never this and you never that because
Mm-hmm.
like you said, that soft startup, it's like, hey, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed with what's on my plate. But what ends up happening is if we tell them by the time we're already fed up, it's gonna come out like that. It's gonna come
Yeah.
out like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you tell me about the baby food one more time.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe like bring it up before we get there. Once we start noticing, like, I'm feeling
Exactly.
a little ragey, right? Like mom
Mm-hmm.
rage is like my new favorite word because I do think that it's systemic, right? Like I'm never gonna blame a mom for being angry because like there's something underlying there. Is it an unmet need? Is it lack of support? Is it systemically we don't value what mothers contribute, right? And it's like let's talk about that. Let's see. I mean, we can't always change policies overnight, right? But we can try to
Mm-hmm.
change what it looks like within our households. Um,
Exactly.
and you're right, we're modeling for our children of like, hey, like mommy and daddy, like we have to be a team and we talk about this stuff, and that's why he's picking you up from school every day, right? Or whatever. uh well, mommy goes to the gym. Yeah, something like that. It's like mommy has needs too, and poppy has needs too, so he's gonna go hang out with his bros or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like whatever
Mm-hmm.
your relationship looks like. So I really appreciate like the role because I just give you big props. I'm not a couples therapist. I'm a one-on-one therapist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's my own stuff. Like, oh, conflict makes me feel yeah, like there's no
Mm-hmm.
word for it, right? But to be able to have someone who can hold that space for us and sit in the uncomfy conversations, it's so valuable. And I always say we don't have to wait until like it's already we're in the brink of divorce, right? It can be as soon as we start noticing, like, hey, maybe we could use a little more tools to just
Mm-hmm.
communicate
Exactly.
better. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so what do you wish like every couple in the postpartum season knew to navigate in this early parenthood season?
Yeah. Great question. I really think it's so important to lean on each other. This transition is like absolutely hard. And even though you both may be going through your own like emotional struggle because dads also experience paternal like depression and all that.
Mhm.
It's so important to still like lean on each other, like actually voice like what you're feeling. Because what I also often see happening that could possibly contribute to paternal depression or anxiety is that a lot of the partners tell me like, if I knew that she was feeling this way, I would step up more. Or by the time that she brings this up, like I'm already feeling like a failure. Like I feel like I should have like known, or I should have done better. And I feel bad that she's coming to me with this pain. And now I feel like it's too late, for lack of a better. I mean, it's not, but that's what it feels like. That's what they report.
Mhm.
Or they feel like, I feel like I'm not being included. Like, I know that she's struggling, but at the same time, they don't create that space for me to feel like included. So it's also about like, again, really leaning in on each other. And again, I love speaking about the vulnerability piece because I think that's a common theme that I see among like new parents or like ongoing parents. Yeah, just really, because I mean, the worst that can happen is like maybe they may get upset too, or they may get triggered, but that's okay. You like work it out. But leaning into the vulnerability can just create so much more emotional intimacy and so much understanding as far as like reducing maybe some of the narratives that we may have in our own head, like, oh, he probably just doesn't want to do it because like he doesn't think that I'm important, blah blah. But what if you actually talked about it, you might recognize that maybe he's feeling that he can't do it because he's struggling, or he feels he's not gonna be good enough to do it. So those are
Mhm.
the key things that I like talking to my new parents about in the postpartum.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I love that. And I think I relate with so much of it. Like one example that I have from earlier in my postpartum was I think I was like trying to like do something with the baby while also do something else. And then I hadn't eaten anything, but my husband was home and I didn't even it didn't even come to my mind to like, oh, let me go ask him to do this so I can eat. Like I was just packing it on because asking for help was really hard.
Mhm.
And he like comes into the kitchen. He's like, "Do you need anything?" I was like, "Yeah, I haven't ate." He's like, "Why didn't you ask me?" And I was like, hmm, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, I don't know. And then I mean, I'm in my own therapy. I'm a therapist, so I started journaling, right? And I was like, oh man, asking for help was just never safe for me. Like not
Mhm.
intentionally. I don't think that like
Mhm.
that was the environment that was created, but I know that my mom had so much on her plate, like so much. I was just like, like she's got a lot going on. I'll just figure it out, right? So I figured out a lot of things on my own, and I kind of that came into my marriage and came into my parenting, and now it's like, all right, it has come to a place now where we need to do something about it, because otherwise, like you said, the narratives are gonna be like, and he never helps me, and he's so selfish, and
Mhm.
it's like but he can't read my mind. He has no clue that this, so like bringing it up will like help our relationship instead of
Mhm.
like my worst fear, like, oh, he's gonna get angry. Why would he get well, and if he does, like at least he knows I need help, right?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you bring up a good point, Joanna, about like the first gen struggle,
Mhm.
because a lot of the couples that I see, they're also first gen,
Mhm.
and that's also like a common thing. It's either like the female or male or whoever, non-binary. One of them who is definitely like deep in their first gen struggles. Like, well, I was so used to doing all of it on my own that asking for help can feel hard or it's new to me. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, let's work on that, right? Because being a parent, like,
Yeah.
kudos to all the single parents. Like, I'm a daughter also
Yeah.
of like a single mom. Like, they
Same.
did the best they could, but it's also, but if you happen to have someone who can help you navigate this transition, why not lean into it? Lean into that support.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, yes, 100%. I definitely feel that. And I think like asking for help, reframing that as like it is important, it is necessary, it's a sign of bravery. It's not like you're not a failure because you asked for help. So like all those internal scripts and having like a professional who can like maybe name that for you. So whether that's an individual therapy, couples therapy, like let's dig into that. Like why is it hard to ask for help? And a lot of times like we don't even think about it until we're burnt out and stressed and we're just like, hey everybody. And it's like, well, does everybody need you know you need support? It's like, no. Right. So it's like it's that piece. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I really, really appreciate you kind of sharing some of your insight and your wisdom. If people want to be in contact with you, your services, how can they reach you?
Yes. I'm on Instagram under Nuevos Caminos Therapy, and then my website is also on the same name, Nuevos Caminos Therapy. You could just Google me. You'll be able like to find me there. Yeah.
Awesome,
Mm-hmm.
awesome. And then like any tidbits for if there's anybody out there who maybe is outside of the states that you're licensed in or exploring couples therapy, any suggestions for how they could find one and maybe even like questions like they can ask to see if they could be a good fit?
Yeah, so I would say Postpartum Support International has a directory of therapists, not only individual therapists or couples therapists. I think one of the first things that you should ask for is if you're looking for a couples therapist, ideally, if they have experience working with postpartum or the perinatal population, that would be good. And ask them like how they help couples like heal in like in their practice, like what are the specific tools that they use in helping them heal in their practice.
Awesome,
Mm-hmm.
awesome. I love that. And yeah, like I like talking about that because I think that I mean, even my own family and like friends, I always let them know like the consultation, like you are never tied down to the first therapist that you
Mm-hmm.
find. Like the consultation is about you. Like I
Yeah.
know it can be nerve-wracking being the client calling, but it's really for you to see like, okay, how is this fit feeling? Like what approach do they take? Is that the approach I'm looking for? I mean, like,
Mm-hmm.
and you can end the call saying, okay, I'm gonna think about this and how can I reach out if I want to schedule an intake, right? You don't have to, if you're not quite sure, you don't have to schedule right there. So like demystifying that process for everybody. Like therapists are usually really nice, like in my experience, and if
Mm-hmm.
they're not, then maybe that's not the one for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? But if you don't feel safe, then it's okay. Find somebody else. Oh,
Mhm. Yeah,
cool.
and I'm glad that you brought that up because I always mention that in the consultation that you have no obligation to commit to working with me. Definitely take your time, and I always emphasize it's so important to find a good fit, especially like if you're navigating new parenthood. To take your time in deciding. Totally okay to consult with 20 therapists or however number amount. You have to look at what works for you.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, definitely. And like a few other directories I read, like the Latinx therapy
Yes.
directory is
Mm-hmm.
great. I think that in San Diego there's something called Postpartum Health Alliance. That's what it's
Oh,
called.
okay. Mm-hmm.
That's like more region specific, but yeah, there's definitely other directories out there. Yeah. So cool. Well, thank you. Thank you so much again.
Thank you
I
so much for
appreciate your
having
time,
me.
Carla. Bye.
Bye.